I want to talk about passing arrays as parameters. But real quick before that, I just want to review passing primitive values as parameters. So a primitive, as you know, is an int, a double, or a Boolean. So here in the main method, I've declared an integer num, which equals 10, and then I'm running this method add1. It's a static method. It's not on an object, but anyway, I'm running add1, and I'm passing it num. Up here is add1. It says pass me an integer value called a up here, and then I'm just saying a equals a plus 1. So this will in fact take the value a, increment it by 1. So a does in fact equal 11. The question is, when I get back down to the main method, have I actually changed the value of num? Will it print 10 or will it print 11? Hopefully you're thinking to yourself, or you're saying out loud, I don't know, it prints 10. I have not changed the value of num. All I've done when you pass a primitive, you've just passed a copy of this value. So really when I pass num, you're thinking I'm passing just the value 10. A equals 10. I'm changing value a to 11. Down here I'm printing num. I have not changed num. So even just to be clear, even if I called this num and said num equals num plus 1, you cannot change the value outside of that method. The only way to do that really is to return an integer in this case. I could return an integer and set num to the value that's returned. But I cannot change num this way. All right, so now let's take a look at an array. So here I have an array called nums. It contains 3 values, 2, 4, 6. Now I'm running the method add1 and passing it nums. Notice the second method is also called add1, but there's no conflict because they have different signatures. This takes an integer, this takes an integer array. So you're allowed to overload. This is called method overloading. You're allowed to overload methods, have more than one method of the same name as long as they have different parameter lists or types of parameters. Okay, so here in the second version of add1, I'm iterating through the array A, and I'm adding 1 to each item in that array. Array position X gets whatever it is, plus 1. So the question is, when I initialize my array and then pass nums, and then return and print out the value of nums, value 0, 1, and 2, in this case, have I actually changed the value? Oops, let me stretch this out a little bit. Have I actually changed the values of nums? Are you thinking about it to yourself? And the answer is yes, you have changed the value of the array. So I'm going to draw a picture of this real quick. Arrays are objects, so I'm going to draw a picture of nums, a very bad picture. This is nums. I'm drawing with a mouse here. It's not easy. So this is nums. It points to an array with 3 values in it, and here's my array with 3 values, value 0, 1, and 2, and the values are 2, 4, and 6, okay. Then I'm running the method add1, and I'm passing it nums. Here I'm calling it a. So what's actually happening is I'm passing a copy of what nums is pointing to. So if I drew this as this diagram, a is actually pointing to the same thing as nums. So in this for loop, when I'm changing the values of a, it's the same thing as changing the values of nums. This is the same array. So in fact, I'm changing each element in this array, each item in the array. So I'm adding 1 to item 0, so that becomes 3. I'm adding 1 to this guy, so that becomes 5. And I'm adding 1 to this guy, so that becomes 7. Hopefully that makes sense. And actually I can run this. Let's make sure I've compiled it. I'll give this a quick run. And you can in fact see that the output of this first system.out.println is 10. I did not change the value as we said. And in the second example, in fact, I have changed the value. It is 357. So very important, when you pass an array, you're really passing a pointer to the beginning of the array, or a pointer to the array. And so you actually can change the values in the array. I just want to go over one other super quick example. I have another example here called reverse array. This is a little bit of a tricky one. So Here I have another array called nums, and it contains the values 2, 4, 6, just like the other guy. Now I'm running a method called reverse, and again I'm just going to print out the value of nums when I'm done, 0, 1, 2. So here I am, I'm running reverse. This is reverse, and reverse says pass me an array, just like the other guy. This time I'm creating a new array called rev. Presumably it's going to be the reverse with 3 items in it, and then I'm just reversing the positions of array A. So in other words, position 0 equals A, position 2, 1 equals 1, 2 equals 0. So reverse contains the reversed order of A. Hopefully you get what's going on there. And then all I'm doing is I'm pointing A, very cleverly, to rev. So the question is, when I get back down here, have I now changed the value of nums? So give it some thought. You got an answer? All right, I'm running it. And I did not change the value. So this, you might be tempted to try to change the value of an array by creating a new array and then pointing the old one to the new one. But that's not exactly what's happening here. And let's draw a picture of it, and I think you'll understand it. So down here, again, I have nums. This is nums. And wow, that's really badly drawn. And nums is pointing to this array. Its values are 2, 4, 6, like that. And then I'm calling rev, and I'm passing nums up to here. So just like in the other one, A is pointing to this guy. That's terrific. Then I make a new array called rev. Well, that's great. And rev is pointing to this new array. And in fact, this all works fine. Rev position 0 equals A position 2. Okay, so I'll paste that into position 0. All right. Then rev's position 1 equals A position 1. Great. So that gets A 4. And then finally, rev position 2 gets A position 0. All right. So that's 2. All right, so rev did in fact correctly reverse this, so how come I just can't say have A point to rev? Well, that worked, but what happened is, I'm crossing this out, what happened is A now points to this guy. The value of nums did not change. The only way to then make nums equal this guy would be to have now 3 lines of code, and I could certainly do that. I could make 3 more lines of code after I've reversed this. And I could now say A position 0 equals rev position 0. So I'm now recopying into A. And let's call this rev. And let's call this A. So I'm recopying. I hope you see what's going on here. I'm trying to be quick about this. I'm recopying, oops, let me redraw where A is pointing. So now what I'm doing is recopying into A, which points to this guy, the values of rev. So this would in fact be 6, oh, this would be 4, this would be 2, and when I run it now, it should work correctly at reverse. Now, there's probably an easier way to reverse, but whatever, let's give this a go. So 6, 4, 2. That did successfully reverse these. So hopefully that makes sense. And you know, if you're ever confused about what's going on when you pass arrays, I always draw a little picture. It helps me out. Hopefully it'll help you understand what's going on. Okay.